Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Cutroni, and I am the Director of Product Evangelism and Customer Education at Trustpilot. And I am really excited to welcome you to our webinar today. Today, we're going to be talking about mastering the new era of AI search. And I'm really excited to be partnering with HubSpot on this webinar. Just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today, first, we're going to talk about the shift that's happening for marketers of how brand discovery is really moving from search to AI. We're going to talk a little bit about how to benchmark your brand and how to measure some of that change, and really excited for Beeri from HubSpot to talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Trustpilot and how Trustpilot can help you be competitive in the new world of AI search visibility. And so today, obviously, I'll be here to talk you through a few things. I'm really excited to be joined by Beeri Amiel, who's the Director of Product Management at HubSpot, and he's really focused on AEO and AI search visibility. He's been in this space for a while, really one of the leaders in developing measurement and what it means to set the foundation for measuring AI search. So really excited to have his expertise and his commentary on this topic. So, as we jump in, let's talk about what's happening to all of us in digital marketing and in business in general, because we're seeing a really dramatic shift, right? Something that comes along over only every once in a while. And, for a long time, 20 years now, we've been very focused on what we'd call traditional search, right? You'd want to answer one of the questions that you might have as a consumer. So you'd go to search, you'd get a list of links, you'd click on some of those links, you'd read, you go back and forth between search results and information, you'd process all of that, and you'd come to a decision. And with AI, that whole process is changing dramatically for people, right? Because now AI just gives you the answer, right? It just tells you the answer to your question. And so there's not that list of links, there's not that back and forth. And so as a brand, that's causing some big changes for all of us, right? Because it kind of takes us out of the loop. It removes our website from all of those visits that we used to get from people that are in the marketing funnel, whether it's up top at awareness or below potentially at conversion. And this change is happening fast. We've got some data here on this slide from SimilarWeb that showed last year that AI platforms grew 76% year over year in terms of their monthly visits, and their downloads grew over 300%, right? So people are using AI now, and it's important for us as businesses to be thinking about that. Now, jumping into a little bit more detail, right, so that we can all talk the same language as we get into some of the cool things that HubSpot AEO can do and some of the stuff that Trustpilot can help with. Let's talk a little bit about what are the basics of AI search visibility, right? And probably all of us have used AI to answer a question, so this might be a review, but you go to AI and you give it a prompt, right? A prompt is a question, and AI responds with an answer, which is great. Now, what's really interesting is dissecting that answer a little bit. It contains information from a lot of different places. Obviously, these AI models are trained on data, but they also go out and they collect information from the internet in order to augment their response, right? The AI systems know that they need to collect some fresh data in order to make sure that the answer that they're giving contains current and modern information. And so oftentimes you'll see a citation within the answer that AI gives you, right? And a citation is really like a footnote. It indicates where AI went out, collected some additional information, and then incorporated that information into the answer. And as businesses, that's really our goal, right? Our goal is to be included in the answer. Even though it may not lead to a visit to our website, we want AI to include our brand, include information about us when it's creating the answer, right? And that's important to know. It's important to understand that whole idea of a citation and being included in the answer. So how might you kind of create a simple strategy? We wanted to introduce this to give you something really actionable, something that you can take away, and also something that's going to link the rest of the content that we're going to talk to you about. And really, it all begins with measurement, right? And this is where HubSpot's going to come in and play a huge part. But you want to invest in measurement. You want to understand how the shift to AI search is impacting your brand. And it's not just about understanding visits to your website, which you should look at and you should understand, but you want to understand, are you appearing in those answers, right? So that upstream, those upper funnel activities. And Beeri's going to talk a lot about that. You want to think about content creation, right? And we're already seeing that certain types of content get picked up better by AI search, things like FAQs, blog posts, or other types of articles. You want to make sure that you're creating that. You want to make sure it's readable by AI, so making sure that they can crawl it, making sure it's formatted right, applying schema. You also want to think about amplifying the message on social, right? Because AI systems are going to be looking across lots of different places for social validation, for information about your brand. So spreading out your message across other platforms will really help provide additional areas where AI can gather information. And the last thing is kind of, something that we've been looking at here at Trustpilot is investing in trust, right? One thing that we've seen is that these AI systems are using reviews in order to validate brand claims, and they're actually using review data to craft the narrative about your brand. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later. But first, with the table set, I'd like to hand it off to Beeri to talk a little bit more about HubSpot AEO.
Thank you, Justin. So let me grab the screen share. Nice to meet everybody. I am Beeri. I was one of the co-founders of XFunnel. Now I am a director of product at HubSpot, leading a lot of our top of funnel products. And as Justin noted, we recently launched our AEO tool within HubSpot. And really, the main point of the AEO tool is to make it really easy for marketers to improve their brand visibility on answer engines. And so the way all of this starts is the brand visibility score. Now, brand visibility score, the way we actually calculate this is every single day we send prompts to the different answer engines. So when you onboard to HubSpot's AEO tool, what we do is we actually help you generate all of these prompts. And if you're already a HubSpot customer, we're using all the information that we already have about you, about your brand, about your customers through the CRM, and we're using that to understand what are people asking about your brand. And so here, for example, we have one of our portals here. And so this is, for example, a Dell computer, right? So what is the best infrastructure as a service for scalable enterprise storage? And as you can see, what we're doing here is you can actually see the data. We're actually sending this prompt to ChatGPT, to Perplexity, to Gemini every single day. And you can see the actual answer. You can see all the different citations here. You can see the different competitors that might be mentioned in the prompt itself. You can also go back in time to see what was the response yesterday or the day before, right? So here you can see the date and you can see how these go back. And so you've got all these prompts. You can also add prompts manually. You can generate these prompts with AI, and we'll actually go and generate some of these prompts for you using, again, the data that we already have about you, or we'll go and actually learn information in real time about you and your customers. But once we actually send each of these prompts to the answer engines, what we're doing is at the prompt level, we're actually analyzing which competitors show up, right? And if you don't show up, what we end up doing is making some recommendations. So all these prompts that we send to the answer engines roll up together to tell your brand visibility score, which across all the prompts tell you in what percentage of the responses that people send to answer engines does your brand show up. So here we're seeing 25%, and we're seeing how much it varies between ChatGPT, Gemini, which is Google's answer engine, and Perplexity. And these things are fairly stable, but they do fluctuate a decent amount because the answer engines are really going out there live and getting the content, the citation, the sources on a really instant basis. So here we see the brand visibility score. Now, the next question is this good? Is this bad? It's hard to know. So what we show here is a competitive landscape, which is how does your brand visibility score stack up to competitors? And so here in the example, we see that Dell was at 26%. We're seeing that HP is about 40%, right? So that 25%, it's not bad, but it could be better, right? We've got some other competitors that are actually doing better. And here we have some overview information about, for example, what are the main citation sources, like source types, that are influencing the answers. And we can see that here, owned content that is coming from the website is only 1.7%, which actually begins to tell you, okay, what's actually driving this 25% visibility score. We also have here a sentiment analysis. What is the sentiment? Okay, so I'm being mentioned 25% of the time, but when I'm being mentioned, again, is that good, bad? What's kind of the point of view of the answer engine about my brand? And we're seeing that it's holding at a 25%, whereas zero is neutral. So that gives additional color to that score of brand visibility. So again, we put in prompts, we send them to the answer engines, we understand who's showing up, which competitors, and then what we're also doing is we're analyzing those citations, right? So I showed you earlier, what are the different key sources that the answer engines are using? And the reason you want to look at this is because what this graph tells you is, okay, if my owned is our own website, my own content in the past is all I cared about, only my blog, right? Only maybe our landing pages. The big difference between AEO and SEO, one of them is that you have to essentially create content that is not only just on your website. Just like Justin highlighted kind of in the strategy, you have to go and identify gaps. You have to create content on your own site. You have to amplify that on social channels, and then you have to go and build trust, right? That's kind of that review site element that Trustpilot helps you with. So here we can actually see that review sites are here, right? They're only 2%, but one that is actually on the high intent prompts typically. Like, what is the best, or what are different customers using? What do people say about? Those really high intent prompts usually go to that review site 2.1%. But we can also see that the website is only 2.1%. So we can actually see the different mix of sources that we need to go and address. And here we can see actually, okay, so when we actually do have an article, what are the common content types that are being cited by the answer engines? Right, so blog is quite often here, educational content, product pages, guides, listicles, and that actually helps us put together a product strategy. Now, here you can say, okay, great, these are some graphs. How can I actually take action on this? How can you make this really easy for me? And so what we did is we actually, HubSpot has been doing AEO. It was one of our first customers at XFunnel, but they've been kind of the first teams out there doing it. And at XFunnel, we worked with some of the biggest teams out there. And really what we've done is we've distilled all the different playbooks that are actually working for AEO into a recommendation engine that we've packaged here. And so it's giving you a bunch of different recommendations that are actually prioritized by impact for things that you should do. So here, for example, we're recommending to take action on Reddit by creating a social post that is essentially saying, add a comment to this specific Reddit thread, and we're linking it out. And we're kind of giving you guidance on what to include in that post. And here we actually show you why we made that recommendation. So essentially, we're seeing this prompt in there, and Reddit was a very common source for them. Here we have a recommendation for educational content. Remember, we saw that educational content type was the #1 biggest content type for this brand. So here we're giving you a suggested content title, How Dell Apex Simplifies Hybrid Cloud Management. We give you a summary. We're giving you kind of almost like a mini content brief about what you should do, as well as the different content types that essentially drove this recommendation. Here we see that educational was one of the key content types, which is why we're recommending an educational content piece. So once you go and create that content, if you do it on HubSpot, you can actually track it. It'll get tracked here to see the impact. But the goal in taking all of these actions across both social, across your blog, and across building trust with review sites such as Trustpilot is to, at the end of the day, influence those citations, which are then going to be what the answer engines are using to respond to folks' prompts that then drives your brand visibility score up. So that's the overall way that you can actually leverage HubSpot to go and win in AEO. And obviously, Trustpilot plays a big part of that because review sites are such a major part of how the answer engines make their decisions. So let me actually shift back now to the slides here. And I want to show you guys really You know, why is this actually important, right? Traffic, about 60% of Google searches today end without a click. And we have about 1.5 billion users, weekly active users using ChatGPT, using Gemini, using kind of all the answer engines. Now, does this matter? Well, in reality, what we're seeing in terms of the data is that because the buying journey is now happening in these answer engines, when a lead comes to your website, it has much from ChatGPT or the other answer engines, they have much higher intent. And that happens because essentially people are being convinced by the answer engine. They're asking very specific questions. They're asking follow-up questions. And so rather than going between like a random educational article to maybe looking on LinkedIn to maybe looking at a YouTube review and then finally landing on your website, they're doing all of that in the chat. And what that means is by the time they get to their website, they have a much higher buying intent. And that's why we're seeing that the leads that are coming from answer engines, what this actually means is that they're actually converting 2.5x higher. And we're actually seeing these numbers go up as high as like 4.4x higher than traditional leads. And essentially the MQLs, right? It's actually like they're converting at a higher rate. They're converting in about half the time. So these are higher quality leads that you would find coming from Google. And so these are going to be, there's a good chance this becomes your best lead source. So it's definitely a really important channel. Now, the other difference, I think, from SEO is whenever you put content out for answer engines, a lot of folks are asking, how does this differ from SEO? Well, in SEO, authority mattered more than relevance. And what that meant was you had to have really high authority to actually be one of the top blue links. In AEO, if you make hyper relevant content to your specific audience, that will actually rank better. And the other benefit is that these changes happen in hours and not months. In SEO, sometimes an SEO strategy took 3 months to kick in. In AEO, we're actually seeing it take hold in a matter of a few hours. And that really matters because oftentimes now we're required to show results fast, right? So essentially, what we're seeing is folks that are actually taking our recommendations and taking action across these channels are seeing results of 10, 20, 30% improvement in brand visibility within a matter of days, right? So the impact is happening. It's doable by large companies and by smaller companies, and it's happening fast. So there's a really big opportunity to unlock a very powerful channel. Justin, I'll pass it back to you now.
Thanks, Barry. That was amazing. And there's so many things that I love about that demo. I love how you explained where the data comes from. I love all the context you give, right? That helps people have a deeper understanding of the data. And I love the actionability. Like that to me really takes the cake. So what I'd like to do in the last couple of minutes is try to go a little bit deeper on that whole reviews part of it, right? And as Barry mentioned, that's an important part of your overall AI search visibility strategy is generating those reviews. And we've actually been looking at how does Trustpilot actually help with that? And we noticed that it doesn't take a lot of work to realize an impact quickly. And so we did a little bit of research recently, and what we found was that if you don't have a Trustpilot profile, AI search will, on around 1%, cite your brand about 1% of the time. Versus if you have a minimal profile, just a basic profile with about 13 reviews, that citation rate can climb up to as high as 54%. And if you even generate more reviews than that, about 81 reviews, that citation rate can scale up to 75%. And as Barry mentioned, this happens quickly. This isn't something that takes months. Really, it's just bound by how quickly you can collect the reviews. So a little bit of investment in Trustpilot, getting a profile, getting some reviews, and you're going to realize an AI citation gain quickly. So what does minimal investment mean? Well, we'll go through that, but really it's about three quick things. First, claiming your profile and filling in your profile. The second is automating review collection, right? Creating a steady stream of reviews. And automation helps with that, so you don't have to worry about doing these things manually. And then finally, responding to reviews. And this is actually an important part because we're going to talk about how AI actually uses the content. So, claiming a profile, very basic, right? It doesn't cost anything. You go in, you're going to be adding things like the name of your business, address, general information like website, things like that. We also give you the opportunity to add additional information using a feature we call the discovery bar. So you can highlight any key products that you have, key services, policies, or even promotions that you might be running. And all of this information, again, is formatted in such a way that is really easy for AI systems like ChatGPT and Gemini to consume, right? We're using schema in order to make sure that they can get it quickly because, again, like Beeri said, these systems are going out and collecting information in real time, and we want to make it easy for them. So step one, claim that profile and make sure that you fill it out thoroughly. Now, the second part is all about automating review invitations. And this is where our integration with HubSpot can come in really handy. So when someone converts with your business, whether they buy a product or they sign up for a service, you want to send them an invitation to review, right? So tell us more about your experience with the business. And automating that along the customer journey allows you to collect information about their experience. And those reviews are being consumed by AI. They're being sucked in when they're creating these answers because they're looking for that proof, right? They're looking for that validation about brand claims. And so with HubSpot, you can use some of their triggers to automate the review invitation. And we see that businesses that automate review invitation have a nice diversity of reviews. They have a good volume of reviews, and it creates that corpus of review data that's fresh and ready for AI. And so the last thing that we always recommend is responding to the reviews, right? And so obviously, AI search is really just one use case for Trustpilot. These reviews are qualitative data about your feedback. They're real human experiences with your brand. And so there's a huge benefit for AI visibility, but there's just a giant benefit to your entire organization, right? Like understanding what's happening with your customers is critically important. And acknowledging that builds trust with them and builds trust with the market. So we always tell people to reply to reviews, whether it's a 5-star review that's praising your product and your service, or if it's a 1-star review where people are being critical about the experience they had, right? And so we always tell people to reply appropriately, right? Like try to empathize with people, especially if they had a bad experience. We always try to say, be brief, right? There's a lot of content out there. Just address their feedback as quickly and as easily as possible. And again, remember that these replies are public, and that's a huge benefit to you in that it's going to build trust not only with other people that are investigating or trying to understand your business, but with these AI systems because they're able to consume the replies that you post to the reviews. And that's important. You know, the research that we've done shows that these systems are not only just, you know, kind of linking out to Trustpilot, they're actually using the review content to construct your brand survey. And they're synthesizing the data that exists in the reviews in 3 different ways. The first way is that they're pulling in the trust score, they're talking about the number of star reviews that you have, and they're talking about the review count, right? The volume of reviews. So they'll talk about those things in the responses. But they'll also look for themes within the reviews, right? And so our data shows that in 63% of the reviews that we analyzed from ChatGPT, this was 91,000 responses. 63% of those contained comments about customer service. 34% contained comments about shipping and delivery, right? And so this is a deeper understanding of what these systems are doing. They're taking this content, they're synthesizing down the feedback, and they're constructing the answer about your brand, right? And so, like Beeri mentioned, right, people are not going back and forth anymore between search results and websites, right? They're taking lots of information, they're creating that story, and reviews are an important part of the ingredients that go into that story. And so, what we're telling people not only is it to respond to reviews, but also thinking about collecting reviews across the customer journey, right? So that way, there's information there about maybe the buying process, their experience with the product, their experience with support. All of those things will matter as AI collects data about your brand. And we try to give you a lot of different tools. Your first stop is absolutely our integration with HubSpot. Like that's an absolute no-brainer in order to make this simple. We also offer other tools that allow you to actually insert like a widget within your app or your website to collect reviews directly from the user experience. Again, the goal is to help you diversify review collection so that there's a large diversity in the types of review, and AI can talk about you in different ways. So hopefully that gives you a quick overview of how Trustpilot fits into your review strategy and some of the things that you can do quickly in order to have an impact on how AI represents your brand. With that, I think we have a few questions that Beeri and I are going to answer. Okay, first question. Does AI prioritize volume or quality? Meaning the total amount of reviews a business has or their current trust score. Does one weigh more than the other in terms of citation? I'm gonna ask the data guy first what his opinion is here.
Data, from what we're seeing, it's actually more about relevance, meaning when there is a review or really any piece of content out there that is the most relevant for the prompt, for the question, that is essentially what we see show up. But I will say that because you actually don't know what people ask, and because prompts are 23, 24, 25 words at least, if not more, what that essentially means is that volume ends up winning because what you want to do is you want to have a scaled out strategy. The more reviews you have, the higher probability you will have to actually match up to more prompts, more use cases, more types of questions, more types of customers that are asking very specific questions. The same goes true for content, right? More on-site content, more content on social. The more variations in your content, the higher probability you are to essentially create consensus across these different sources and also to address the different types of questions because all these questions really vary so much.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I think one of the things that this brings to mind for me is, this new age of AI, I think is going to drive a lot of hyper relevance, right? Like AI systems are going to learn about users and what they want in their answers, and they're going to look for hyper relevant content in order to answer those questions. And that I think Barry framed it wonderfully in terms of hyper relevancy drives volume, right? Because if the more things that you can have that are specific to different questions or phrasings, I think that's going to be really important. Okay, next question. Does responding to every comment on your business's Trustpilot page influence how AI regards your brand, no matter what you were rated? Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, and I'm going to say yes, right? Responding to all of these different reviews matters. If you think about it at a very general level, if you respond to all of your reviews, AI sees that, right? And that creates a story in that this brand listens, this brand responds, no matter what the feedback is. And it's also an opportunity for you to actually answer some questions, right, that people might have, getting back to the more information about specific people's questions. So, we don't have any specific data about that, but, our general point of view is if you can respond to all of those reviews and those comments, the better off you'll be. Okay, one more question. This one's for Beeri. This is happening quickly, almost like when we first had website. It feels like businesses are overwhelmed and not taking action. How do we position AEO and its impact to businesses to ensure they don't regard this as just another fad?
I think there's kind of two data points here. One, the numbers speak for themselves. we're seeing 1.5 billion people from a channel that didn't exist, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? And that is only accelerating and accelerating way, way faster than I think anybody expected. So one, that's where users are migrating to. And then the flip side of that, we're seeing traffic down, right? They're going somewhere. So everybody's seeing the data themselves. The traffic is not coming in the same way that it used to from Google. And we're seeing the data of the stickiness. And I think we're all seeing it in our day to day, right? We're all using ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, like our tool of choice. So the trend is happening all around us. And the trend itself is moving, right? The way ChatGPT works, they just launch ads. These answer engines are evolving, but at the minimum, we need to start observing them and tracking our visibility to understand what we need to do, because we can see that, it's been here, for like a couple of years now, and it's only gaining more and more steam. So this channel is here to stay, and we just need to look around us to really see that it's taking hold. And I think we hear every day that marketers are feeling overwhelmed, right? Like I speak to marketers every day, and it is absolutely true. We had this playbook that's been working, since Google launched. We had the inbound playbook. We know this better than anybody at HubSpot, right? It's really a headwind that we see many marketers face. And I think you just have to kind of get out there and begin experimenting with these new channels, because at the end of the day, as much as AEO might seem intimidating, it's really building along on top of existing marketing strategies, right? You've been writing content, you've been creating social content, you've been doing hopefully some work on your reviews as well. But it's really AEO brings all of these together. So there's nothing to be scared of, right? Marketing has always evolved, it's going to continue to evolve, but it's really just about reorienting your strategy to this new landscape.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. All right, and with that, we've come to the end. I just want to genuinely say thank you to Beeri. It's delightful to have an absolute expert who's been working in this space spend the time talking about a really, really important topic and showing us, HubSpot's new AEO tool was just awesome. Measurement is really the foundation. So, Beeri, I just want to say thank you. I really enjoyed our time
Thank you
today.
for the time. This has been fun.
Cool. And with that, thank you, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful day.